Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, here on Sunday, we were watching the radar very closely because for the first time in a while, we were seeing moisture finally return all the way to the eastern side of the state. And you're looking here at a radar animation that starts about midday Sunday and goes through Sunday evening when I was recording this. Up until this point, several of the systems that have come across the country have really cut to the north. And as a result, as the fronts had come over the Appalachian Mountains, they had been quite weak, failing to deliver good lifting in the atmosphere to deliver better chances for rainfall across the state. Well, that is not the case tonight. Unfortunately, some of these storms were severe, but down here in parts of Georgia and Florida was where the worst part of them really kind of sat. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at what this means in the context of rainfall we have seen so far this winter. We're then going to see what these next 2 weeks kind of hold, because the pattern becomes a bit more conducive for us to have quite a bit of heavy rain going forward, which will likely eliminate some of the drought risk that we've seen develop. We're then going to turn our attention to the longer range and look out there clear to spring with some of the new data that's out. And we're going to step back and look at South America. So that's where we're going with this particular forecast video. Now, through 7 o'clock on Sunday evening, Central Time, so 8 p.m. East Coast time, this is just fantastic. I love seeing this much moisture coming into South Carolina and the eastern side of North Carolina. This has been an area that has been so very, very dry. So some of these storms did put down between a half inch, some of them over an inch to an inch and a half of rainfall, and they're loaded, and the pattern is getting itself set up in a way that's going to continue to deliver better chances of stuff like this. You see, over the last 30 days, as we talked about with those systems cutting to the north, we've developed drought conditions right here along the coast, and this stretches down into parts of Georgia and throughout Florida. Throughout the southern plains, there's been extensive drought. In the northern plains, there's been drought developing. But from California, which we know we've been covering extensively, where the snowpack is now 200 to 400% of normal. The snowpack on like the headwaters of the Colorado River, the upper Colorado River Basin, about 140% of normal. And then coming out here into the plains, this just got hit again last week with heavy snow. This has been just the targeted area, all right? What is going to change is better moisture here, and a lot better moisture over here. And why this is important is we can look at this another way. Rather than kind of showing you the newest drought monitor, which is kind of a longer term cumulative statistic, I just want to show you the ranks per climate district since the start of this new year. So just notice right here along these 3 climate reporting districts along the East Coast, we're looking at a top 10 to top 20 driest start to any year since 1893. And it's very important just to see the contrast from the previous setup in the jet stream, setting up this area to be nearly the wettest in a century and a half, or about a century and a third, and then the dryness on either side of it. So this is what's changed, and this is where much of our discussion is going to start. We are going to have to ask ourselves, how long does this split flow last? So you see the jet stream coming off of Japan, it's retracted back toward Japan, and a piece breaks north and a piece breaks south. And what's important for us is that we keep seeing troughs over in the West Coast digging deeper and deeper into like Arizona and New Mexico, and then ejecting and racing on off like this toward the north and east, following this subtropical part of the jet stream. So what that means overall is, as long as we keep the retracted jet in place in the split flow over the west, and no major blocking features like over Alaska, Greenland, or Scandinavia, we get to keep this. And just as a general rule of thumb, the closer you are to the fastest flow in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere, the more routine the weather systems are coming through the area, and the better the chances are of lift, and lift results in precip. So let's watch this. Ready? I'm just going to play this through. This is a 15-day forecast, and I want you just to watch these deep reds in this area. That's that piece of the subtropical jet that's resulting from the split in the flow just off the west coast. So this is all the way through Thursday this week, going into next weekend, and out there into early next week. And there's a constant theme all the way out through day 10 and actually all the way to day 15. The Pacific jet stays retracted. The flow is very weak here. It then gains its momentum from Texas to the mid-Atlantic. And this piece right in through here is being kind of supercharged, if you will, by 2 things. There's a subtropical ridge to the south of it, and there's going to be some cold air that comes in on this side. So the subtropical ridge has the heat, the Arctic air coming in the trough to the north. Well, of course, it's got the colder air. What happens is the air accelerates in between the two. And that's what's going to set us up for a quite wet next couple of weeks. Now, just taking a look at the near term, I started this off late Sunday afternoon just to show you. This was the moisture moving through overnight on Sunday night. That front clears out early in the morning on Monday, but we will be watching light snow push up against the Appalachian Mountains. Now, going from Monday into Monday night and Tuesday morning, the next system, do you see it coming out here? I'm way over here, sorry, in Arizona and New Mexico. That system has dug in deep into the southwest. And as it emerges, look at where it's putting precip. I mean, just as a quick reminder, this has been one of the driest places in the last, not just 30, but almost out to 90 days. And we're now finally seeing a system deliver moisture to that area. Even though it's snow here, that's going to be very much needed. We did get some snow coming out of eastern Colorado into Kansas. That delivered some much needed snow to the hard red winter wheat belt that's in this area. That was at the end of that was this past weekend. And this low is going to run right over the Red River Valley of the South. We have a risk for some strong to severe storms with this. Eastern Texas coming over into Louisiana and southern Arkansas. And it's going to head straight toward the confluence of the Mississippi and the Ohio. Now, the important difference with this system is it's going to maintain this southern front, and it's going to eventually deliver the moisture to us. And to see that, I want to do kind of a multi-model analysis here. I have the GFS on the left and the European on the right. And let's just get this queued up to where that system emerges right here. So keep an eye in this area. Coming out of the Four Corners states, there we go. This is Tuesday morning, midday, and evening. This is now playing out to Wednesday morning and midday. Notice how both models, very strong agreement on the position and timing of this front coming over the Appalachian Mountains and delivering more rain. So this is Wednesday. We'll take a look at totals in a second. That system then goes into the northeast. We see a little clipper that runs through the Great Lakes states here eventually out of the upper Midwest. That one could put a little light snow into the Appalachian Mountains. But look at that. See this ridge right here? That's now feeding the next system. So what do we just see? Can I show you that again real quick? This system comes out on Tuesday and gets to the Carolinas by midday Wednesday, really Wednesday morning into midday Wednesday, and then it clears. Now behind it, the clipper comes through, and the next system starts to take shape here on Sunday, very early on Sunday morning, this upcoming Sunday. And it's in both models. This is great to see this kind of agreement in the models. And then that comes across us by next Monday. So that is the next few systems on their way toward us. And the models are suggesting that even out into week 2, do you see this? I'm rocking back and forth next Monday, Tuesday. Another system born out of the same area and forecast to ride that extended jet right toward us. So let's break this down into some precip totals. I'm going to use just the European model to get kind of our best estimate here. So this was what fell on Sunday afternoon. So this is already there. Some places picked up another inch on Sunday afternoon and evening. As we play this forward, our next system, do you see it coming out of Texas right there? It's going to come right over the top of us. That's the one that comes over Tuesday, Wednesday, exits Thursday. And now let's see the system this weekend. So there's Saturday to Sunday. There it is. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's get you back there. This is now Saturday into Sunday, and that one comes through early next week. And the reality of it is that there's enough liquid in these next 3 systems to put down 2 to 3 inches across parts of North Carolina. Now, to look at this another way, I want to show you some probability maps. So the color down here at the bottom represents the probability. So to get an inch over the next 15 days, of course, we have very high probability. This is the chances of getting 2 inches. Okay, whoops, we switched to a new model run while I was recording, so let's go back. Let's grab that again. There you go. So now we see that the probability of getting at least 2 inches is highest right into this corridor, but still across the state, better than a 50 to 70% chance of getting 2 inches. And you'll even notice that the models are they're staying relatively aggressive, possibly suggesting that some places could have a decent chance at picking up, again, including the rain that's coming tonight, plus the next 3 systems fully into week 2, there's a decent chance of picking up quite a bit of moisture. So this is going to really eliminate some of the major drought concerns that had been happening. Now, there is going to be some snow with this. I'm just going to show you where it's going to be. It's not going to get cold enough to get to us. Could it hit the Appalachian Mountains? Sure. Is it going to be very snowy in the interior of New England? Absolutely. Will we see systems kind of digging and cutting across, but they're not capable of delivering cold enough air because of the presence of that southeast ridge fueling the subtropical jet to get to us. So we do end up staying mild longer than any other place in the country. And it's been very mild. This is just a look since the beginning of this year at our ranks. going back 131 years on temperatures. So the closer you are to 1, the warmest. We see across the state we're likely having a top 10 warmest start to any year on record. But it's been much warmer than that compared to normal, okay? To our north, back in the upper Midwest, even in the Tennessee and Ohio Valley, and down here to Texas. Very, very mild start to this year. But this is what temperatures are doing. These are high temperatures on Monday. The color shading represents a difference from normal. We go into Tuesday and Wednesday, all right? Playing out here toward Thursday and Friday, we start to see some near normal air in terms of temperatures try to come in here. But this will be the first big shot at colder air, reinforcing that pattern I discussed going out there into next week. Now, speaking of next week, this is a 5-day sliding window of temperature anomalies. And if you notice, the coldest air settles throughout Canada, into the northern plains, upper Midwest, the western United States. But as I said, as this cold air dips, the subtropical ridge reinforces, the flow goes right in between. We tend to stay on the mild side of this into the beginning of February. In fact, this is the forecast for Groundhog's Day, which is coming up, big meteorological holiday. And then it may not really fully get the coldest air into our area until we get past that first few days of February. Now, February has one major wild card that I have a very difficult time assessing, and it's this. By a couple days from now, on the 25th, our polar vortex, this is up at where the pressure is 10 millibars deep in the stratosphere, is completely pushed over to this side of the Arctic and North Atlantic. It's oriented in this kind of from our perspective, north-south view, and it's elongated in this direction. And it's got a large, what we call sudden stratospheric warming event forming this ridge that's squeezing it. Now, polar vortex disruptions sometimes take 2, 3, 4 weeks before what happened here gets kind of coupled with the lower atmosphere to deliver really, really cold air. I just want you to know what happened. And we need to see its timing and the potential changes in it and what that might mean for us. Now that gets me set up in the new long-range forecast. The CPC just released this on the 20th, and it looks out there at their week 3, week 4 pattern. So they're very similar to what I described, keeping that subtropical ridge. Therefore, they have wet conditions a little bit farther to the north, but I imagine if they did a revision of this early this week, they would move this above average precip closer to the Carolinas. All right. Here's what the European weeklies have. I think there'd be a similar adjustment. These get updated on Monday night and Thursday night, so this is Thursday night's update. I think we would see this spreading a bit farther, more like that, the greens representing wetter than normal conditions. Now, when does this cold air possibly get here? It won't get here until after we fully get our way into the month of February. So the end of January is going to be mild for much of the Carolinas. And what I mean by that is just no sustained deep cold air is forecast to be coming in. But if we just kind of step back and say, what are the main controlling factors? I just want to let you know something. The La Nina is still showing signs of fading. We have really strong trades still right here. They're still going, but the warming of the water on this side of the the Pacific, is a sign that this particular La Nina is likely letting go of the reins on its grip. The other part of this is that the MJO, which is kind of a interaction between what La Nina is doing and then the Indian Ocean winds coming here, is now taking it for the first time in a while into the Indian Ocean. So the new forecasts are suggesting that we're going to dip this La Nina down here into the Indian Ocean, which is quite important because it's not been there for a while. But this is what we tend to get with that pattern. The jet stream has a hard time extending off the Pacific. Why? There's typically, when the MJO is in the Indian Ocean, a big ridge here. So subsequently, there's a trough that dives, but notice there's a southeast ridge. And therefore, the flow comes screaming around. That's why we think that this pattern we're going into now is one that's going to have some legs to it. It's going to last possibly a couple of weeks, maybe if not 3 or 4 weeks going forward. So keep that kind of tucked away in the back of your mind that, as I just drew on this a few moments ago, this whole region in through here is staying wetter than normal going into the end of January through the beginning of February seems to be of high probability. Okay, long range stuff. This is brand new long range stuff. They just updated this late last week. I want to go out there and look at, why don't we do March, April, and May? We're going to look specifically at precipitation. You see how the models are continuing to keep this Ohio River Valley, mid-Mississippi River Valley wet. They do not have us on the dry side of this. And even as we go out there farther, let's go out one more set of months here. How about April, May, and June, fully into spring? They actually do have us on a slight wet bias, but the wettest conditions are right in through here. Now I got to thinking about this because we've had some pretty disruptive wet springs at times, and I want to know if we have that possibly on the table, because it's certainly on our doorstep, right here in the Ohio Valley. Could that mean a wet and stormy spring for us? Those will be questions we need to ask. One other thing to point out, the western and high plains do continue to show up in the models as drier going forward. So I did this. I went out, you've seen me do this before, but we went to North Carolina in the historical data set from NOAA. I went April to June, so those 3 months, spring, and I looked all the way back to 1895 at those wet and dry years. So this kind of bounces around, showing you the wettest and driest years. The wettest on record during that time period is 2003, but you can see right in through here we have like 2013, 2017, 2020. Those were all very wet springs, whereas our last two, 2021 and 2022, are actually drier springs compared to average. I did put a blue line on here to represent the trend since 1970. So even though there's a lot of variability, technically we're seeing wetter springs by just a little bit, about a ½ inch or maybe about 3/4 of an inch over the last 5 decades. Now, plucking off those really wet years, we notice this. We tended to have a strong La Nina, especially up against the West Coast. And we do not see that right now. Again, this is what the ocean temperatures look like. We also notice this. You really got to have deep troughing that's centered right here over like Ohio back to Illinois, such that the flow comes in and dives and then races up the East Coast. Now, we don't think right now that this is where the trough will be. The main thinking is that this trough is going to be much closer to the U.S.-Canada border. And if it's there, that takes one piece of the risk off the table for us having an overly wet spring. Again, this is April, May, and June. The other piece that's taking it off is this, the ocean temperatures. So as we go from January into February, March, and April, let's just park it there at April. Actually, let's go to May. What you see is the models are wanting to get rid of La Nina by spring. Now, I showed you a few moments ago that if we're going to have a very wet spring, it helps to have a La Nina developing. And what we just looked at here is that we don't have that. So that means that if we end up having a wet spring, there's no indications today that would give me any sort of confidence in telling you that that was going to occur. I see other things taking over. I don't see it being a dry spring. In other words, I don't expect the opposite of this. But there are certainly some indicators right now that the subtropical ridge is going to keep its grip on things in the near term, but maybe past, February into March, we may lose that signal and not see such strong signals for super wet conditions going into spring. That's good. That means decent chances at getting our crops established should that verify. Okay, from here, to wrap this up, I've got to take you to South America, and I want you to watch this animation here. This, as it plays, is going to show you some of the storms we saw here over the weekend, actually over the last week in Argentina. So it's kind of playing this through here, and I just want you to keep an eye here. Notice these large clusters of storms that moved through this past weekend. Sorry, it's a little slow in loading here from NASA. But the point is this. Let me just get you to the end point. Since January 16th, most of this really falling on the 19th, 20th, and 21st, we've now seen rain come back to Buenos Aires, Cordoba, and Santa Fe. Some places, very, very heavy rain is estimated by satellite. This has been some of the driest locations in all of South America compared to normal so far this spring and early summer for them. Now, as we look out there, the models are continuing to keep the moisture coming. So we just keep an eye on Argentina. We see another front coming through midweek this week. Look at the storms it's developing here. This is getting out to Thursday into Friday of this week. And even playing forward, we still see more storm activity coming through Argentina through the next 10 days. And the European models suggest near normal precipitation, especially for northern Argentina going forward. So the rains that just came through kind of, I don't know if this is the right phrase, but kind of stopped the bleeding of how bad the drought was getting in certain places. And more normal precipitation seems to be in the forecast going forward. So the markets are going to open in about 15 minutes after I finish recording this. And I'll be very interested to see if they react at all specifically to this map, because this is showing that there was moisture finally getting to one of the driest and most agriculturally productive places in South America. Now, when you come back to this, we see a little bit drier than normal conditions in Mato Grosso. They're trying to harvest a crop here, very wet in central Brazil. This wet right in here is really pushing that first season soybeans to a big, big, big crop. That's what it's doing. But in Mato Grosso, they're trying to harvest right now. and they're a little bit off pace. So you can see normally they have about 9% harvested. They're about 6%. Last year was 13%. And when it comes to what they do immediately behind that, which is to plant corn, they're a bit farther off, about 5% off of normal. And if we just kind of blow this up here, you can see that they're about 7% or a little bit more than 7% off last year's pace. So this again is the planting of corn in Mato Grosso specifically. So just wanted to keep you up to speed on what's happening there, but I think I'll wrap it up here and hope you all have a good week. We'll talk again soon. Thanks.